15.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me this evening. I talk different decibels to everybody else. I once went to a poetry... So I'm not slagging anybody off here, by the way. I'll give you a poem. Here's a lovely poem, which I wrote when I was 18. And I'd just come out of Nick and I was trying to be posh. Will I find this thing well known in loveless legs stretched wide? Or will I find this thing well known on the cool hillside? That was a bit of Wordsworth with a bit of shagging. Anyway, I'm not here for that. I'm very interested. Oh, sorry, I was just going to tell you that I went to this event. It was the son-in-law of Bertolt Brecht. And the poetry, which I could totally relate to because I love Brecht, was a kind of, and it went like that for 2.5 fucking hours. Sorry, I'm speaking. It went on and on. And I thought, how wonderful to hear poetry read as though it was something vociferal. What's the word? You know, down there. You know the word, that posh word. Page 3 of the dictionary. Anyway, in about 1997, the big issue was about 6 or 7 years old. And I was invited by the National Film School to go down to Beaconsfield and talk to a load of prospective documentary filmmakers. And I went down there, and there were a lovely bunch of people. I wasn't being paid for this, by the way. They didn't even pay for my ticket to get there. So I thought they were a bunch of cheapskates, and I got there, and I was a bit pissed off with them. They didn't offer me a tea or a coffee or a fag or anything. And I thought, what a load of ponces these documentary filmmakers are. Anyway, they then said to me, there was a Scottish guy with a very nice Edinburgh accent, said, "Excuse me, Mr. Barrett," he said, "if you were going to make a film about anything, what would you make a film of?" And I said, spending 3 fractions of a second. I said, I'd make a film about myself. Me. Why not? I come from Central Casting. I was born in Notting Hill, which, as you know, is a place of great problems. You know, you've got the Portobello Road there, and you've got all those Ponzi clubs, and you've got those Ponzi places like the Electric Cinema. And you've got real struggle, you've got people on social security, and you've got all those other problems. And then mixed in with it are all those people from the media who have moved in because they love to be on the edge of society. Now, unfortunately, when I was born there 65 years ago, it was a shithole. And there was all sorts of things like wife beating. Wife beating is a very wonderful underclass preoccupation. My father, lovely building worker that he was, you know, didn't go to Oxford or Cambridge, would beat 10 colours of shit out of my mother in our slummy little bit of Notting Hill, and I would have to watch that. Unfortunately, I have to say, when I came out of Nick, age 18, I was as tough as anything. So when my father tried to pour a kettle of hot water over my mother, this would look great in a film. I grabbed hold of him and gave him a good kicking, and he never again laid a finger on my mother. So I was a bit of a social worker at that time, and a bit of a psychologist, and I walked around with a clipboard, and I made my father behave himself. So anyway, if you're going to make a film, wouldn't it be good if you could make a film about someone who was once a part of the problem, who becomes a part of the solution? I never see films about John Anthony Bird. I never see films about people who had shit poured into their head, so that my mother, who, apart from being a devout Catholic, was also a devout racist, and thought that blacks and Jews really should not have a place on the Mother Earth. My mother taught me to believe that Mr. Rackman was the person who drove us out of Notting Hill, this Jewish landlord. And when I looked at the history books of the Bird family, I realised, of course, we got kicked out in 1951 for not paying the fucking rent. And Mr. Rackman bought his first property in 1955. So when I said to my mum, Mum, you're going on about the 4x2s, the front wheel skids, pouring this shit into my head, and me at the time struggling to be a Marxist, Leninist, English Trotskyist, a meltist, trying to melt capitalism. And you give me all this shit, and actually it wasn't Mr. Rackman, and my mother said, well, feck 'em. They're all the fecking same anyway. My mother never swore in the whole of her life. In fact, I'm working on a book at the moment called Fecks in the City, Growing Up London Irish. I thought it'd be a nice book. Anyway, if you want to buy a copy, you're allowed to have a copy. Anyway, I see all these films. I'm sorry, I love the films that this young lady's done. I've seen them all, and I think they're wonderful. But wouldn't it be nice if we could have a film about somebody who had been a part of the crisis, who becomes a part of the solution? Because that is the new area. That is what nobody has ever done. Now, if you go back to the French Revolution, you imagine the French Revolution without the poor. Who the fuck is going to batter down the doors of the Bastille if it's not the poor? So we know that the middle classes love a little bit of trouble amongst the sans-culottes. You've got to have the fucking poor, because who's going to run round and cut the throats of the petty bourgeoisie and the bourgeoisie and the haute bourgeoisie? There's somebody laughing down here. This is a very serious history lesson. Sorry about this. By the way, they're making a film about me at last. I wrote a book called Some Luck. It was supposed to be called I, Bonaparte, because I have always had delusions of grandeur. And when I was in the prison system, and I used to go back to prisons, people used to say to me, how did you get over the low self-esteem? I was saying, what fucking low self-esteem? I always had fucking too much of it. How do you think I was... Oh, sorry. Oh, please forgive me. A wet iMac. Can I have some more water, please? That's all right. Are you enjoying this? Is this all right? Sorry, I'm not here. Forgive me, it's all right. Where was I? Tell me, please. Low self-esteem. Everybody thinks that if you've got low self-esteem, you must come from the underclass. And if you're from the underclass, you must have low self-esteem. And here was I, thinking I was born to save the lot of you. Absolute lot of you. Anyway, I haven't had a drink, by the way. I've had just 3 or 4 glasses of red wine over in the corner there. I mean, normally I take 10, but I'm all right. Anyway, so my big problem is that there are too many people, and please forgive me, who have gone to the university, who've gone to the public school, who've gone to all sorts of things like that. And we never allow the people who are a part of the shit to become a part of the voice of modern society. And what I've tried, somebody walked out, there you are, just like that. And I have tried desperately hard to give the people I work with a voice. And the reason I've tried to give them a voice, there's another person working up, there's only 2. Normally there's about 15. But the real thing is, when are we going to ever break down that division between us and them? Now, you know when Sir Francis of Assisi, a good Catholic boy, in the 14th, 13th century, he decided, I'll tell you what, I'm pissed off with all this prosperity. I'm pissed off. I love her, you know, she's laughing down there. She's not anyone. I love all this prosperity, and I love all this wonderful life, and all these clothes, and all this incense and myrrh, and all that shit. But I'm going to give it all up, and what I'm going to do is go down and help the poor. Now, what we got to remember is the moment you help the poor, you enslave the poor. In 1998, that wonderful human being that we all love and look upon as an expression of the most complete expression of human society, Mr. Tony Blair. He had a conference, and at that conference he said, we live. He liked this, he had his arms out like that, because he was like, you know, he always used to go around like that. Walk around, yeah, the problem, he could never get through the door, because he had very long arms. And he walked around and said, we live in an age of giving. And it's wonderful that we live in an age of giving. And I wrote to my friend, I rang up my mate at The Guardian, and I said, give me a page. And they gave me a page. And I said, if we live in an age of giving, does that not mean that we also live in an age of taking? Have you ever been a taker, a recipient of the handout of the well-intended? Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Lovely stuff. But it enslaves you forever. You become a part of the poor, and you stay a part of the poor forever. So when John Anthony Bird was born in slummy Notting Hill, we need a film about John Anthony Bird, because he was a piece of social shite, homeless at 5, in a Catholic orphanage brought up by the Sisters of Charity, who spent an enormous amount of time telling him that there were hard-working Irish people paying for his feckin' bed and his feckin' loaf of feckin' bread and his feckin' pint of wet fucking tea. Feckin' tea, sorry. Anyway, so there I was, caught in this kind of trap. And then when I got out of it, it took me shed loads of time. I struggled so hard to get into the middle classes that when I got in there, I found out that they were brainless. I found out that they actually were not the great thinkers I thought they were. I thought they'd all be like Voltaire. I thought they would want to tear up society and start again. I went through the Marxist-Leninist movement, and what did I find there? I found people who always talked about the poor as a battering ram. And me and the class I come from were to be battering rams. And then later on you would meet Crisis and Shelter and Shack and Shill and Shed and Shit and all those other homeless organizations who looked carefully and kindly on the poor, but would never try and address the real problems. That what we needed to do was get the poor to join us. So what have I tried to do with the big issue? I've tried to bridge the gap. Excuse me, though. I'm a perfectly formed human being, as you can see, apart from this throat which is wearing out because every night of the fucking week I'm talking to somebody. Oh, sorry. How many minutes? 1 minute. All right. Anyway, this film is based on my book, Some Luck. And I hope it's going to be out soon. And we haven't asked Ray Winston to pay me because, he's a better looking version of me. But it'd be nice if he coughed up a bit of his time and did me. But wouldn't it be nice if we could take somebody who'd been a part of the problem, who'd become a part of the solution? I was a Marxist. I gave up because I realized that it was run by largely the middle classes, largely the well-intended, and the last people they ever wanted to involve in running the operation was the underclass and the poor themselves, often because, like my dear mother, they expressed the wrong opinions, that they didn't like blacks and Jews. And that rules you out, never looking at the fact that these thinkings, these thoughts were often a defense mechanism for poverty itself. Anyway, God bless you. Good night. Thank you.